I shoved open the heavy workshop door. Inside, it was dim. Only a desk lamp burned near the entrance, casting long, dancing shadows.
Alara?
Julian was already standing there in his coat, backpack over his shoulder, clearly ready to leave.
What are you doing here at this hour?
He stepped toward me, his face a mix of relief and anxiety. I couldn't stay home. I tried to smile, but my lips wouldn't obey. The walls were closing in.
Everything is closing in here, too.
He lowered his voice, nodding at the closed office door.
That new guy, Noctar, he's still in there. Something hellish is going on here. Abernathy is missing. His phone has been off for 3 days. And this guy, he appeared out of nowhere. No records in the registry, nothing online. It's like he doesn't exist.
Julian.
A voice rang out, dropping the room temperature by a few degrees. We turned around. Noctar stood in the office doorway. He leaned his shoulder against the frame, arms crossed. In the gloom, his eyes looked like black voids.
You are staying late, Mr. Julian. I pay you for restoration, not for spreading conspiracy theories.
I'm just worried about a colleague. Mr. Abernathy wouldn't just vanish. He loved this place.
Noctar peeled himself off the doorframe and took a step into the hall. He moved strangely, smoothly, yet with a certain strain, as if every step caused him pain.
Love fades. Abernathy chose peace. I advise you not to dig into the past, Julian.
Alara, please, let's go.
He reached out his hand as if trying to pull me out of a fire. I looked at his palm, warm, stained with ink, an anchor to the safe world. Then I glanced into the shadows where Noctar stood. Julian didn't see what I saw, the tremor in his fingers, the pallor. Something pulled me to him stronger than common sense. Go, Jules. I need to talk to Mr. Noctar about a book.
Are you sure you're okay?
He froze, studying my face, looking for signs of coercion. Yes, go. He hesitated, torn between fear for me and the inability to argue.
Call me. We need to meet and talk about everything.
Okay, I promise. He walked swiftly, as if not giving himself a chance to change his mind. The door closed quietly, but the click of the lock sounded like a sentence in the silence. As soon as the lock clicked, cutting us off from the outside world, Noctar's mask fell.
Did you bring it?
His voice was quiet, rough like dry leaves. He took a step toward me, but his knees buckled. He leaned heavily on the back of an antique chair. The wood creaked pitifully under his grip. Yes. I unzipped my bag. My fingers touched the leather cover, and a wave of cold hit me. The book was heavy, unnaturally heavy, as if I were carrying a piece of a tombstone. I pulled the grimoire into the light. Noctar raised his head. His gaze darted to the book, then to me, and in that gaze was absolute animal hunger. He tried to take a step, but his body failed him. Noctar crashed to his knees, then lost his balance and fell onto the sofa in the corner. His chest heaved, trying to pull in air he couldn't get. I saw the gray color spreading across Noctar's cheekbones, black veins crawling up his neck like a web. Noctar? I took a step. He didn't pull away. On the contrary, he reached a hand toward me, trembling, fingers white.
Alara.
His voice was soaked in agony and desire. I walked to the sofa. The grimoire in my hands hummed. I lowered the book to the floor beside him. Noctar sat with his head thrown back against the sofa. His eyes were half closed, but I felt his gaze on me, heavy, sticky. He was inhaling my scent. "You're in pain," I whispered.
I am drained.
He replied hoarsely. I saw his fingers gripping the sofa upholstery, tearing the fabric. He was holding back. He was fighting the urge to lose control. I couldn't watch his agony. Something inside me was tearing loose, reaching for its master. I sank to my knees before him. "Take it," I breathed out, not fully understanding what I was offering. I reached out. My fingers touched his neck, where the unbuttoned collar of his shirt revealed damp, cold skin, beneath which a black vein pulsed. His reaction was instant. He didn't recoil. He covered my hand with his own, pressing it harder into his skin. Flash! The world vanished. It was like being struck by lightning, not from above, but from the inside out. The boundaries between us erased, reality turned inside out, and I was thrown into a memory. I saw myself from the outside, 3 days ago, that vial in my hand. I'm changing the rules of the game. I drink the content. Searing cold tears through my throat. My heart skips a beat. 1 beat, 2, silence, the void, and then him, Naktar. His face twisted in horror. He doesn't let me fade. He leans over me, pressing his lips to mine, breathing not air, but his essence into me. Fiery, ancient magic that forces my heart to beat again, violently. Live! His scream in my head. The flash faded. I sucked in a breath, throwing my eyes open. We were back in the workshop. I was kneeling at his feet, my hand still pressed to his neck, and he was gripping my wrist as if I were the only anchor in a storm. Naktar looked down at me. The gray color had vanished from his face. His eyes burned with ruby fire, full of returned power. And now I knew why I was drawn to him.
You remembered our deal, Ilara.
He whispered, leaning close to my face. His voice was low, full of grim triumph. Yes, my voice trembled. It was no accident. Naktar rose slowly. Now he towered over me, full of strength, and it terrified me even more.
There wasn't.
I drank from the vial. Why am I here? He stepped close. His hand reached for my face, and I flinched, but he only touched my cheek softly, almost tenderly. Now his skin was warm.
Did you think the end was an escape? Foolish, brave restorer. Your heart stopped, Ilara, but I restarted it by giving you most of my power.
Did you make me a monster? He shook his head, his gaze becoming frighteningly serious.
No, you are alive. But now your life is my magic. We are tethered. If I weaken, you fade. If you leave, I perish.
He nodded at the grimoire, which now lay still, like a fed cat.
You saved me just now, Ilara. Your energy fed it. We are now a single mechanism, a closed loop.
I looked at him, at the man who was both my doom and my savior. I felt my heart beating strongly and steadily in my chest, my heart, filled with his power. I wanted freedom, I whispered. Naktar smiled, but there was bitterness in that smile.
And you got eternity. Welcome to my cage, Ilara.
I sat at the table, clasping my hands so tight my knuckles turned white. I was overloaded. Too much of a demon's essence inside a human body isn't a gift. It's a ticking time bomb.
Ilara, are you listening to me?
I blinked, focusing on Julian. He sat opposite me, papers spread out on the table. My colleague, the only thread connecting me to a normal life right now. He looked anxious, his glasses sliding down his nose. "Sorry," my voice sounded raspy. "My head is splitting."
I bet. Look, this is a copy of Abernathy's power of attorney, and this is a sample of Abernathy's signature from last year.
I looked at the papers. The letters danced. Instead of ink, I saw the dull glow of residual magic. Are they different? I tried to guess.
They are identical, Elle. Too identical. Like someone copied the signature with a laser. But that's not the point. The date. The document was signed on the 14th. Abernathy was with us in the workshop all that day, remember? We spent the whole day on that tapestry. He didn't leave for a minute.
Julian leaned forward, covering my hand with his.
This Naktar is a fraud, or worse. He scared the old man off, and now he has you.
His touch was meant to soothe. Instead, it burned. Julian's human warmth clashed with the alien magic inside me. The sound in my ears amplified tenfold. I heard the blood rushing through Julian's veins. I smelled his fear, sour, metallic. The magic inside me reared up, demanding release. I wanted to yank my hand away, scream, or strike. "Julian, don't!" I hissed, feeling the air around us begin to vibrate. The water in the glass on the table rippled.
I'm going to the police. I have a friend in the economic crimes unit. We'll bring this shadowy figure into the light.
I'm afraid that is impossible.
A voice rang out, instantly changing the tone of the vibration inside me. The air turned icy. The street noise vanished, as if someone had hit mute on the world. Naktar. He stood right behind Julian. Black coat, collar popped, hands in leather gloves. He looked like a bird of prey that had descended from the sky. People in the cafe didn't look at him. They instinctively looked away, sensing it was better not to see.
You? Are you stalking us?
Naktar didn't even dignify him with a glance. His black eyes, with red embers smoldering in their depths, were fixed on me. He saw that I was shaking from an energy overload, that I was ready to explode.
Julian, your concern is touching, but you are exhausting her. She is unwell.
Naktar said lazily, walking around the table. He moved with a predator's grace, but I noticed a slight pallor on his cheekbones. He was hungry.
She is unwell because of you. I know about the forged documents. I know Abernathy didn't just disappear.
Julian blurted out, stepping in front of me like a shield. Naktar stopped. For a second, a look of boredom mixed with irritation crossed his face.
Documents? Paper is patient, but people are not.
He stepped close to me, ignoring Julian. I froze. My body traitorously pulled towards him. The magic recognized its master.
Stand up, Ilara.
Don't you dare order her around.
Julian grabbed Naktar by the sleeve. He realized his mistake instantly. Naktar didn't push him away. He simply looked at Julian's hand on his coat. The air thickened. Julian turned white, unclasping his fingers as if he touched a hot iron. He recoiled, gasping for air as if an invisible noose tightened around his throat. "Julian!" I cried out.
Hush, he is breathing, for now, but we need to go. You are radiating, my dear.
Naktar was beside me. He reached out and without asking permission, touched my neck, right under the hairline. Cold. His fingers were icy, but that cold was salvation. In that second, the noise in my head stopped. People's heartbeats vanished. The heat burning me from the inside flooded toward the point of contact with his skin. He was draining the power from me, right here in front of everyone. I felt his fingers tighten on the back of my neck, holding me up because my knees gave way.
Just like that. Give it to me. You have too much.
He whispered in my ear, his lips brushing my temple. I saw out of the corner of my eye how color returned to his face, how the pallor vanished. Julian watched us in horror. He didn't see a magical exchange, but something deeply unnatural. How I went limp in the arms of the man I just feared. How I pressed against him, seeking support. Noctar pulled away, but didn't remove his hand from my waist. Now he looked full of power, his eyes shining with a dangerous, triumphant gleam.
Goodbye, Julian. I advise you not to dig deeper.
He threw over his shoulder, guiding me toward the exit. Julian remained standing by the table. He was pale, confused, but in his eyes I saw not just fear. I saw determination. He noticed the unnatural nature of what just happened. We walked out to the street, to the black car. Noctar opened the door for me, but didn't let me sit immediately. He pressed me against the cold metal of the car, looming over me. We were alone in the parking lot.
You are playing with fire, Ilara. Meeting him when you are in such an unstable state, you could have ended him with one touch.
His voice was low, vibrating with the energy he just took. I tried to find out the truth, I whispered, still feeling weak after the feeding. Did you finish Abernathy? Noctar laughed, a dry, joyless laugh.
Abernathy was a boring old man. I gave him money and wiped his memory. He is happily fishing in Florida right now. But your Julian, he is a problem.
He took my chin, forcing me to look into his eyes.
He is digging a grave, Ilara. Not for himself, for you.
What are you talking about? Noctar leaned in very close. Shadows danced in his eyes.
I took the excess energy to feed the book, but the Grimoire, it is changing. It senses you have become stronger, that you are a living artifact. The book demands life, Ilara, real hot vitality, and tonight it made one thing clear. If I don't bring it an offering, it will start drinking from you, not energy, but your very life, to the dregs.
Noctar ran his thumb over my lower lip, and I shivered. I froze. So what are you going to do? Noctar looked toward the café, where Julian's silhouette was visible in the window, gathering his papers.
I think we are very lucky to have such a persistent volunteer who is so eager to enter my workshop uninvited.
Noctar drove with one hand. He gripped the steering wheel so hard the gloved leather creaked. I sat in the passenger seat, feeling the storm inside me subside, leaving behind a ringing emptiness. He took the excess, but with it, part of my warmth. "Where are we going?" I asked, looking at the wet asphalt.
To the workshop. Julian is becoming a nuisance. You don't understand the rules, little restorer.
Noctar braked sharply at a red light. He turned to me, and under the streetlights, his face looked carved from marble. "So explain them to me," I snapped, my voice rising to a shout. "I said we're tethered. Why isn't the contract broken?" Silence hung in the cabin. Noctar looked at me for a long 5 seconds. Then he slowly unbuttoned his cuff, pulled off his glove, and offered me his bare hand. On his palm, where the lifelines should be, a black scar pulsed in the shape of a shattered circle.
Touch it.
I hesitated but reached out. As soon as my fingers touched the scar, a vision pierced me. Not an image, but a sensation. Cold, an endless icy wasteland, and hunger so powerful it twists your insides. Loneliness lasting thousands of years. I yanked my hand back, gasping for air.
That is what I feel when you are far away, and that is what awaits me if you fade,
he said, turning back to the windshield. The light turned green.
I cannot break the contract, Ilara. The Grimoire does not accept returns. As long as my flame burns in your chest, the slot is taken. I cannot make a deal with anyone else. I am chained to you by the fetters you forged yourself with your wish.
So we're stuck together for 10 years? Naktar smiled bitterly.
10 years, optimistic. In this mode, with my power in your fragile body and the Grimoire's eternal hunger, we will last maybe a couple of months. There is too much of my magic in you. It burns you out from the inside like acid through cheap plastic, and I lack enough of it to keep the book in check. We are connected vessels, Ilara.
So what is the solution? I whispered.
Feed the book something else. Something that contains life force but is not my magic.
An offering? I went cold inside.
A donation. We need a third party, someone who enters the circle voluntarily, or someone who has already stuck their nose in.
My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. A message from Julian lit up the screen. "Elle, I found something in the archives about the workshop building. There's a basement not on the blueprints. I'm driving there now. Don't worry, I'll call the cops if I find anything." The blood drained from my face.
What is it?
Nothing. I tried to hide the phone, but his hand intercepted my wrist. Not painful, but unyielding. He read the message over my shoulder. His lips twitched in a smile, predatory, terrifying.
A basement. Foolish, brave Julian. He thinks he'll find evidence there.
And what will he find? I asked, already knowing the answer. Naktar looked into my eyes. His pupils dilated, filling the irises with blackness.
He will find the Grimoire, and I think it will be very happy with dessert.
Naktar sharply turned the car across the double solid line. Tires screeched. "You have to stop the book!"
No, Ilara. We are going to watch natural selection at work. If the book claims him himself, the contract will consider it an offering. This could buy us time.
I won't let you destroy him.
You misunderstand. If the book claims him, I won't have to drain you tonight. It is a choice, darling. His life or your pain.
The car raced through the rain towards the workshop, where ancient evil slumbered in the dark basement, and my only friend was fitting keys to the door behind which his doom awaited him.
The basement door yielded with a heavy, reluctant creak. Dampness wafted from the darkness. "You're losing your mind, Julian." The thought raced through my head. It's just an old basement, no mysticism. I turned on my phone's flashlight. The beam trembled, snatching dusty steps from the gloom, leading down into the black maw of the unknown. Every step was a struggle. My body screamed at me to stop. The hairs on my arms stood up and my stomach twisted with nausea. It was that primal instinct that made our ancestors run from a dark cave where a predator lurked. Turn back, leave, forget it. But I forced myself to descend. I had to find proof, for Abernathy, for Ilara. There's no one here. I whispered aloud to drown out the ringing in my ears. My voice sounded flat and died instantly, swallowed by the walls. The beam of light slid across the concrete floor. Empty. No boxes of archives, no old furniture. Only this strange, perfect cleanliness in the center of the room. And this table. It wasn't a workbench. It was a rough, unpolished slab of black stone, looking like an altar from nightmare tales. It stood in the middle of the basement, alien and eerie, and on it lay the book. I walked closer, feeling the cold seep to my bones. The Grimoire. It was massive. The cover didn't shine like leather. It absorbed my flashlight's beam like a black hole. It looked wet, oily. It's just a prop. I tried to convince myself, but my mind refused to believe it. Some stupid, gothic antique Nakhtar uses to scare impressionable girls. I brought the phone closer to take a picture. My fingers wouldn't obey. And then the silence burst. The sound was dull and wet. I flinched, nearly dropping the phone. Who's there? Silence. Only my own breathing, loud and ragged. Louder, closer. I lowered the beam onto the book. Did I imagine it? Or did the shadows around it thicken? No, I didn't imagine it. The Grimoire was breathing. I saw the black, bumpy skin of the cover slowly rise and fall. This can't be. Books don't breathe. It's a hallucination. Gas, mold. I saw the air above the altar shimmering, distorting space. All my logic, all my skepticism crumbled to dust. Only animal terror remained. Cold, paralyzing horror of realization. I am not alone here. No. I breathed out, backing away. My legs turned to jelly. The book twitched on the stone. Flaring with fear, I spun around and bolted for the stairs. I ran, stumbling, scraping my hands on the rough walls, not daring to look back. It felt like the darkness behind me had already extended its claws to grab my leg and drag me back into eternal night. I flew out of the basement and, not remembering myself, ran out into the pouring rain, away from this cursed place.
Nakhtar's black car screeched to a halt at the alley entrance, blocking the exit. At that same moment, the workshop door burst open. Julian ran out into the rain. He clutched his phone to his chest, his face white, eyes wide with horror. He had seen something in the basement not meant for mortal eyes. He took a step toward his car, but his path was blocked by Nakhtar, stepping out of the shadows like the embodiment of night itself.
Going somewhere, Julian?
I have it all recorded. Photos of the altar. I uploaded it to the cloud.
Julian flinched but raised his phone. I jumped out of the car, slipping on the wet asphalt. Julian, no! Listen to me!
Stay back. You knew. You're helping him. Down there.
Nakhtar made a lazy motion with his fingers. The phone in Julian's hand sparked and shattered with a loud pop. Julian cried out, dropping the smoking wreckage.
The cloud is unreliable.
Nakhtar remarked coldly. He advanced on Julian. Nakhtar's shadow on the wall took on a life of its own. It became huge, clawed, reaching for the guy. Nakhtar raised his hand, and Julian was slammed against the brick wall by an invisible force. His feet lifted off the ground.
He saw the Grimoire. Now he is a hindrance and a problem, Ilara.
No! I rushed to them, grabbing Nakhtar by the elbow. My magic resonated with him, and the invisible grip loosened slightly. There must be another way.
A way? I can end him quickly. That is mercy. If I give him to the book, he will be suffering for eternity.
You talked about Abernathy. You wiped his memory. Do that. Take his memory, but leave him his life. Nakhtar froze. He looked at me with frightening interest.
Wipe his memory?
Do you understand the price, Ilara? To calm the book, I must burn everything to the ground. He will forget this evening. He will forget the workshop. He will forget his job. And he will forget you forever. To him, you will become empty space, a stranger. Are you ready to destroy his memory to save his worthless existence?
Naktar leaned into my face. I looked at Julian. He was almost losing consciousness. If I refused, he was doomed. Do it. Erase him. Naktar smiled with satisfaction.
As you wish.
The invisible force released Julian, and he fell to the wet asphalt, greedily gasping for air. Naktar crouched before him. He removed his glove. Naktar's voice was soft, hypnotic.
Look at me, Julian. Oblivion Eternum.
Julian looked up. Naktar placed his palm on his forehead. Black smoke tore from Naktar's fingers and screwed into Julian's head. The guy arched his back, opening his mouth in a soundless scream. A thin stream of silvery light, his memories began to flow from his eyes. Naktar inhaled this light. The book accepted this offering, an offering of the mind, not the body. Julian went limp. A second passed, another. Julian slowly sat up, blinking. Rain poured down his face. He looked confused, like a child waking up in an unfamiliar place. He looked at his hands, then at Naktar, and finally at me. I took an uncertain step toward him. Julian? He frowned, looking at me with absolutely empty, indifferent eyes. There was no fear, no warmth, no recognition.
I'm sorry. Do I know you? I don't understand how I ended up here.
My heart skipped a beat. The pain of those words was sharper than any knife.
No. You just got lost. Go home. You don't belong here.
Naktar answered for me, rising and possessively wrapping his arm around my waist. He pulled me close, demonstrating ownership. Julian nodded uncertainly. He stood up, brushed off his coat, and without giving me a second glance, turned and walked away out of the alley, dissolving into the rain. I watched him go. My colleague vanished. Only a shell remained.
Now there are only two of us, Ilara. No one else will stand between us.
He turned me toward the workshop door.
Let's go.